All right, good morning, Trig scholars. Unfortunately, I'm not on campus today because I have a really bad migraine, but I want to go through our notes for today. So today we're going to talk about evaluating trig functions using your calculator. We've spent about a week and a half on unit circle. We're going to continue practicing with the unit circle, but we know that the unit circle doesn't give us values for every point. So we need a calculator to supplement. In order to evaluate trig functions and their inverses on a calculator, you must check that the settings in your mode button are in the correct units. This is the only time you have to worry about that. If you're just doing regular math like square roots and x squareds and polynomials and all that fun stuff, polynomials don't care about the units on angles. So it doesn't really matter what setting you are in mode. But when you're evaluating trig functions, sine, cos, tan, you're evaluating their inverses, arcsine, arccos, arctan. The calculator needs to know, am I giving it information in degrees, or am I looking for degrees as an answer, or do I want that information in radians? So, first thing we do is check the mode setting. You should see in the upper left corner of your calculator, I think it's the upper left, let's check. Oh, it doesn't show it on my digital. If you don't see it, you can come down to mode, and you should see an option for degree or radian. But I believe on your fancy calculators, there should be a little indicator either in the top right or the bottom right, I think, where it says degree or radian. Check that it's in the appropriate mode. Once you've done that, we know that it's in the right mode. To evaluate sine, cos, or tan, just use the sine, cos, or tan button. We can go back to our calculator and see that there are sin, cos, and tan right here. Right, sin or cos or tan. The question is, what happens if I want to evaluate a trig function that's not one of those? And to do that, we have to use the fact that we know that cosecant, secant, and cotangent are reciprocals of sine, cos, and tan. So if I want to evaluate cosecant on my calculator, I'm going to press 1/sine, and then whatever the number is. If I want to evaluate secant, I'm going to press 1/cos. And then if I want cotangent, we know that's the reciprocal of tangent, so 1/tan. So we're going to do some practice together. I'm going to do 1 through 6 with you, and then you guys are going to complete 1 through 12, more practice on your own, and then I'll stamp that you did that practice when I see you on Monday. Before we start the practice with our calculator, notice that we've got squiggle lines instead of regular equal signs here, and that's because calculators give us an approximate value. When you run sine of most of these numbers on a calculator, you're going to get a decimal that just goes on and on and on and on, right? Like 9 or 10 places on the screen, and the calculator rounds it. So this is an approximate value, not an exact value. So if on an assignment you see approximate value or use your calculator, we typically use that symbol because we're getting an approximate value. If the problem says exact value, no calculator. You should be using the unit circle because we know that our calculator is going to spit out an approximation. Okay, so let's pull up our calculator and do some trig. So we'll start here. Number 1 says sine of 30 degrees, which means I need my calculator to be in degree mode. So I'm going to press mode, I'm going to go to degree, and then I'm going to get back to my home screen to start doing math. So second mode, and then I want sine of 30. And I get 0.5. And in this case, that's actually an exact value because we know from the unit circle sine of 30 is 1/2. Yay. Next one, I check the setting. This is in degrees. I know my calculator's in degrees because I just did a degree calculation. And then cosine 42. And I generally round these out to about 3 decimal places. So I'm going to write this as 0.743. All right, so the next one, we want tangent of pi over 3. And I know that pi over 3 is in radians and not degrees. Radians and not degrees. So I need to adjust my mode setting before I do my plug and chug. So mode, radians. I go back home, second quit, and then I'm going to do some calculations. So tangent, and then the question is, how do I get pi on my calculator screen? And you can't really see it on my calculator, but in blue, above the caret button, there should be a little pi in blue. There should be also an H in green. So to pull pi up, I'm going to press second, and then the little up arrow button beneath clear. And you should see a pi pop on your screen, and then divide by 3. And we get 1.732. And remember that sine and cosine have a range of -1 to 1. Tangent is not limited by that, so it is okay that tangent is bigger than 1. All right, let's try some of the slightly trickier ones. So next one says cotangent of 281 degrees. So we have to check our mode. Mode is in degrees. And then I know to evaluate cotangent, that's 1 over the tangent. So 1 divided by tangent, and then 281. And we get -0.194. Similar idea for the next one. Next one says secant of -56 degrees. I know secant is 1 over cosine, and I know from the last problem my calculator is still in degree mode. So I'm going to do 1 divided by cosine, and then negative is that sign beneath the 3. Don't use subtraction. -56. And we get 1.788. That is also okay. Cosine is between -1 and 1, but if cosine is a decimal, and I do 1 divided by that tiny decimal, I'm going to get an answer that's actually bigger than 1. So this is okay. Last one is cosecant of pi. I know pi means I'm in radians, so mode, radians. And then cosecant is 1 over sine. So 1 divided by sine. And then pi, I'm going to go second caret button. And you are probably going to see an error. And that is because this guy does not exist. Because cosecant of pi is 1 over sine of pi. And I know that sine of pi is 0. So that one does not exist. We are at an asymptote for the cosecant function. And when we look at graphing in our next unit, we'll look at exactly where those asymptotes are coming in for all of our reciprocal functions. So for these 3. All right, hopefully that's not too scary. Again, just those 2 quick reminders. Check your mode setting before you evaluate a trig function. And if you're asked about cosecant, secant, or cotangent, use their reciprocal identities. About a third of your homework in Delta Math this week should just be practice evaluating these. Make sure that you're following the rounding directions as stated in Delta Math. So mine said 3, and I rounded all my values to 3. Delta Math may say something else, so read those directions carefully. If you have any questions, you can reach me via email. Otherwise, I will see you on Monday, and I hope you have a good weekend.